Good afternoon, everybody. Hopefully everything's working. We may have a few technical issues last minute, as always. Thank you to everybody who's tuned in today to listen to our update for our WEC Group valued employees on the current overall position. Obviously, we hope everybody is safe and well. Please rest assured there is no specific announcement today or to follow. This is purely a platform for the directors to keep everybody updated on the actions and events within the group. I am Wayne Wild, I'm the Group Commercial Director at WEC, and with me is Gemma Kennedy, who's the HR Manager for the group. We're at the mercy of the quality of the internet and technical gremlins, so fingers crossed everything as possible. The format we're going to keep straightforward as possible, so I'll give a brief introduction and an overview of what we're doing today. A presentation of some slides, technicalities being well. We're then going to have a short Q&A on some pre-received questions that Gemma's requested that have come in overnight this morning, this afternoon. At the same time, please continue any questions coming in. Text them to Gemma's number or email to her work address as she's already sent out previously. Then we'll have a brief conclusion and round up. So where are we at today? Well, from the 23rd of March, when Boris Johnson announced lockdown measures, all our lives and our working lives dramatically changed. The announcement initially caused huge confusion. I called the Northern Powerhouse Minister, Jake Berry, who's our local MP, that night to get clarity. And even he wasn't sure. So we had to ring the business secretary to get guidance. It was clear that manufacturing was not to close. We were not on the close list. The government was clear they needed industry to continue, and this has been borne out with the contribution we have directly made to the NHS by making critical parts needed from various sites since the beginning. We reacted quickly by setting up morning director and senior management meetings, and every morning we have then issued guidelines to each site and the managers of what actions they should be taken. The introduction of the furlough scheme has enabled us to put into place policies immediately and ensure the businesses continue. So I'm just going to try and share some slides with you now. Hopefully you should be able to see so this is the induction slide. So as we can see, this is really the critical points of our discussion today has been the head count and what we're doing for our staff to keep people safe and well. Total head count as of this morning is 919 people, and you can see that furloughed as at first thing this morning was 450 people. That's actually gone above that from today with more decisions made, and we're now just over the 50% mark. You can see that we have a number of people working from home as well, as per the government instructions, and we've got still a number of people working on all the various sites. So as you can see that this is throughout each of the divisions, rough split, 50% between each, some more severe than others, and that includes the group central functions. The head count of 77, as at this morning, 35 furloughed staff, that's gone above 40 now. So that includes purchasing, IT, marketing, accounts, etc., etc. So we've made provisions to move people into furlough to protect the business going forward as part of the government's furlough scheme. And the reason why is very clear when you look at this graph. This graph gives you a trading update of WEC as at this morning. April and May targets, because the working days are very similar, just over £9 million a month is what we need to keep bringing in terms of sales to keep the business running. I get regular sales forecast updates from all the general managers once a week, and feed that into a live forecast that the directors use to make decisions with and to report back to our owners in America. And you can see that as of this morning, the April forecast final invoice figures is just going to be just above £5 million. And the May figure is less, but just under £5 million. So the dip is continuing from April to May. That shows you that running at 45 to 50% off sales highlights why we are at around about 50% of furloughed staff. So we're doing this in conjunction with our order book. Our order book is changing by the day. A lot of our customers have closed or semi-closed, but a lot are continuing to work. So we're still at 50% of sales, even with the current pandemic. We're reviewing that target every day. We're reviewing each site, each area, each person by name, trying to do the right thing in respect of what our customers are looking for us to do. Part of that has been in the providing support to the key industries, such as the NHS. Some slides I'll share with you now. Sure, this is laser engineering. You can see some of the press breaking of the parts that we've used and then have gone through the powder coating plant. So of that, ongoing deliveries with 8,000 of these units have already been made, and a further 8,000 production at powder coating stage, which is powder coating from other manufacturers as well. Them parts have gone into the trolleys that you can see here. One of the famous F1 teams that we've supplied these parts to. You would normally take at least 12 months to get certified to supply this customer. We did it in 24 hours, and within 24 hours after that, we were making trial parts, and we got the order from after that, and we're supplying the key units within the week. So an extremely short lead time, an extremely fast turnaround. So well done to everybody who was involved in that. These are parts. We've made over 4,000 units of these have been delivered across the NHS to the Nightingale hospitals, and we continue to receive further orders for these as well. Only as at last night, the night before, we got an order, our WEC machining division in Blackburn got an order for 8,000 precision machine parts, 4 ventilators, of which have gone into immediate production. As you can imagine, if we were open for business, the NHS would be struggling to procure these parts. So we feel very proud to be able to do a bit ongoing. So that leads us on to what we're doing in terms of back to work planning. We initially, through the initial announcement, we reacted very quickly to put things into place to what we could do then. And obviously now a concern is to do with what we're doing to keep the business running and forward planning for when we can go back to work. Obviously we're at the mercy of government instructions, government directives, but already all the general managers are working hard behind the scenes to try and work out what planning is being doing, and obviously safety being number one. So some of the measures being currently put in place, some high-vis Lloyd signs are in place around the factories. Our health and safety is the key criticalness for the directors and the senior staff at the moment. Got to maintain social distancing of 2 meters. Obviously that's critical. That's being announced by the government every day. The measures regarding coming to work are still in operation. If you're showing any symptoms of the COVID disease, you must not attend work for at least 7 days and self-isolate. If any of your family are showing symptoms, then the directive is that you stay at work and self-isolate for 14 days. Obviously, when in work, continue to wash hands frequently for at least 20 seconds, 8 to 10 times a day minimum, and obviously as many times as required. So you'll see also there's floor signs around various areas, such as stores, to ensure social distancing rules and the clocking machines, etc. So these are some of the new measures being brought into all the different factories. Staggered start, finish and break times, 15-minute intervals, to reduce the pinch points at locker rooms, washrooms, canteens. Operators have been requested not to enter the building any earlier than 15 minutes before the start time, so obviously keep the numbers on site as low as possible. Walkways to have 2 metre social distancing measures on the floors. And all the office layouts and meeting rooms are being converted. So a lot of the boardrooms are being converted for general office use so that we can spread everybody out onto different zone areas and into different shift patterns as well at the same time. And we're currently sourcing partition screens so that we can use them as and where required in the offices. Hygiene and housekeeping, we have ramped up significantly around locker rooms, toilets, canteens, etc. So to keep the cleaning of these, we have hired numerous new cleaners to keep this ongoing. Touch screens and keyboards of all PCs are being cleaned at the start and end of every shift. Hand sanitizers distributed around the factories and offices. And fabricators have been asked to clean down weld torches at the start and end of every shift, and the wipes being supplied. Anybody returning to work who has not been used to the new safety measures on site will be debriefed on all the additional measures that we've put into place and all the precautions to make sure they're aware of what we're doing. And obviously any operations where social distancing is more difficult, we're requesting that face masks and latex gloves are being worn to keep everybody safe. Full PPE to be worn when signing, accepting goods being delivered and or collected. And external delivery drivers and non-essential visitors are not allowed to enter the premises. So overnight and of this morning, Gemma has been receiving various questions. So Gemma is going to go through the questions now, and then we'll try and answer them as much as we can within the limited time that we've got. Continue asking any questions throughout this process. As I said before, if you text them to Gemma's number or email them to her email address, she'll collate them. And at the end, just before the wash up and finish, if there's any relevant questions that come in, we'll try and answer them as well. There's been quite a significant amount of questions. A lot of them obviously overlap each other's. So Gemma, if you can go through the ones that you've put together, and we'll try and answer accordingly. Yeah,
so like Wayne just said, we've been inundated with questions, so thank you to everyone that submitted them. We've got a lot of repeated ones, so I'm going to try and work through them and just pick out some of the more relevant ones and hopefully answer all your questions the best we can. For any that we're unable to get through, I will type responses up and issue them back and respond to everyone that submitted questions as well. So question one, Wayne, has come from Gordon at Laser. Gordon's put, I realise that it could be several more weeks before lockdown is eased, even in a small way, but as more companies plan to reopen in a few weeks, like Nissan in early June, are we looking to recall people from furlough in stages to handle any increase in work? And then there's a second part of the question. And also, do we plan to contact our customers to see what their plans are, as this may help us to predict staffing levels in advance?
Okay, two-sided question like the government scheme, like the government daily ones, I guess then. But in terms of furloughing, we've obviously furloughed staff in accordance with our sales order book. We have defurloughed a number of staff on occasions at most sites when that's been necessary. So that has meant that if, for instance, somebody's been on furlough for a week and we've had to bring them back, which has happened, then the company will have to cover that cost. We can't claim that, because in order for the company to claim off the government scheme, they have to be off for a 3-week minimum. But where it makes commercial sense, we've took that decision, and it's been the right and proper decision to make. So in terms of people coming back to work en masse, we don't really know at this stage. The government scheme is due to end on the 30th of June. If that gets extended, it gets extended. That's to a minimum, so it won't be less than that. As and when customers start coming back, and we're in daily contact with customers where possible, and there's a full spread. Some are already indicating they're going to come back at the beginning of May, tomorrow, and today and next week. We've got some telling us they're not going to be coming back until early June, and some telling us not till late June. So we've a full spread across all sites, and even customers are not exactly sure themselves when they're coming back, because it depends on their supply chains, it depends on their own customer order book. But in terms of our staff coming back, we will continue to keep in touch with everybody as we have. There'll probably, I would guess, be some sort of phased return over the periods. But as at yet, it's impossible to give any dates or give any confirmations of when particular sites or particular departments will come back. We're taking these decisions daily as workloads increase or decrease. Did that answer his full question? Have I missed anything?
No, I think that work covered everything. I was going to ask one from Jamie from Laser as well. You were asking quite similar, really. Have we got a rough target of ideally when we want furloughed staff to return to work?
Well, you can imagine, although the cost is covered by the government for people being on furlough, that doesn't help us, because while people are not at work, either as a direct operator or indirect in the office as a salesman or a project engineer, they're not contributing to the income of the business, which is then not helping us cover all our other costs, our overhead, the rent, the rates, the utility bills, insurance, etc., that we still have to continue paying for. So while people are off furloughed, that's okay, and he's welcome from the government scheme, but he's not helping us in the slightest. We want people, obviously, when it's safe and it's proper and it's right, to come to work so the business can continue. But in terms of time frames, the only time frame we know is that officially the furlough scheme ends on the 30th of June. Apart from that, we're taking it day by day.
Yeah. I've got a question from Chris at Sherburn. Chris has said, is there a set period of notification which will be given to any furloughed employees when they are required to return back to work?
Again, really, I'm repeating myself, but we don't have any specifics from customers yet, although some customers have indicated dates. So one of our key OEM customers at MTL have given us some specifics on return to work days within May and June, but we haven't seen the schedule of requirements yet. So we don't know what the volume of work is. They'll have some inventory and stock around them that they'll be using first. So we don't know what that impacts on our order books or schedules and work requirements. So again, I'm sorry to seem vague, but I can't give a specific answer unless I know, unless we're given the information by our customers. So, but I can just reassure you that every day, and we try to give notice where possible, but so far we've been giving staff 24 hours notice in some respects to come back. So literally Friday come back Monday, Tuesday come back Wednesday, or furloughing people on the day for the day after. It's been that, short. We don't have big visibility of numbers, but as and when we do, we'll try and give as much notice as possible.
Yeah. So there's a question from Neil from Laser. So Neil asks, for all the staff that haven't been furloughed, are we going to get any recognition for staying on and showing our commitment to the company? I think if you speak to all the staff on the shop floor, they all feel the same. They've all had 6 or 7 weeks now of people sending pictures of them sat in the gardens drinking beer while they're at work. He said, I think it would be nice of the company to give the non-furlough workers an annual pay rise, as morale is quite low and working conditions have been awkward.
A fair question. A number of people have asked that around the sites previous to today. Obviously, we thank the people who are at work fully, continually, extremely. It's for the benefit of the whole company going forward. Laser engineering, for instance, I know have been working 3 solid weekends going forward in order to meet the demands of the NHS orders that we've had through. And if we hadn't done that, we wouldn't have been able to help the cause. And it's difficult. We're trying to rotate furloughed staff where possible, but that's not easy. The company at the moment are paying staff working on site in full, and the government are paying for the furloughed staff who were off. And that was a welcome scheme from the government to help us keep the business running and allow us to pay everybody still. Going forward, we'll deal with what we can going forward. You know, we welcome everybody and thank everybody for working. And then going forward, we have to have a business. At the moment, we are lucky that we work for a company. WEC Group is a solid company that's been running for 40 years with good cash reserves and a good solid business model. But we are losing money every day. We are losing money every week. And the longer this continues, we will continue to lose money. So it's difficult to discuss or talk about pay rises or bonuses in a situation where the company is losing money. You know, we are adamant that we will come out of this. We are a very, very strong business in a difficult sector of engineering that is difficult to make profit. We have shown that we can do that, and we will back, and we will be stronger when we bounce back. But what the period of time is, we don't know. All we can say is we will be fair and reasonable to everybody as far as we possibly can.
Yeah, I think you just slightly touched on something that quite a lot of our staff are asking at the minute, and that is about the pay rises that were potentially being implemented from like February, March. We've got a question from someone that wants to remain anonymous at 5750. And they've just said, before coronavirus, I was informed I would be getting a pay rise. We've recently been informed that due to the current circumstances, we won't be receiving our pay rise. Machines are still operating and we continue to come into work. Will we get a pay rise? Will it be backdated? Can you explain why the pay rise wasn't given?
Yeah, I think it's crystal clear. You know, when the directors and management agreed to pay rises or pay changes, you do it based on your knowledge of forecasts of what you see going forward in the future and the strength of the business. And you like to share that and be fair to all our staff. Clearly at that time, when decisions were made, nobody knew about this global pandemic. You mentioned that the question said that machines are still running. Well, if you look at the slides that I've showed, machines are still running, but at 50% capacity and falling. Yeah. We have a very high overhead level, and we've got to reach a certain amount just to get over that to start making money as a small portion of profit. Anything under that, you start making dramatic losses. So with all good faith, we talk about pay reviews, but obviously within that, we have to deal with global events. And this has been a global event like none before. So it would be remiss and wrong of me to promise anybody anything at this stage. All I could say is we always have been and we always will be fair and reasonable. And at the time when we're back solid and back normal again, then we'll ascertain the damage that's been done, the economic damage is clear. And we will make decisions accordingly, but we want staff who are motivated and empowered and want to carry on working for us forever. So we will do all the right things at the right time to make all the right and fair decisions. But we are, bear in mind, we are in we're in a trench warfare at the minute, trying to keep the business running, trying to keep a cost low and trying to continue to be in work, quoting every job that's coming in to try and win every job. You know, and I feel that we're in a competitive industry. All our competitors are still working, are still trading, and we've just got to keep continuing, try to be as strong as we can and as fair as we can, as and when we can be, without making any silly promises that we can't keep.
Yeah. I've just received a text message from Josh at MTL. Josh is an apprentice at MTL. And he says, I've been wondering if apprentices like myself would be coming back around the same time as the normal workforce, or a few weeks after, due to us not being key workers because of us not having the correct knowledge and still having to learn.
I would have to take guidance from the apprentice trainer at MTL when he's thinking of bringing the apprentices back. Again, we need apprentices. They're the lifeblood of the business, the guys who end up going onto the shop floor, and obviously the key workers for us. So as soon as we can get people back, we want them back. We don't want people sat at home on furlough. We want everybody back. So again, I'm repeating myself a little bit, but I can't give any specific dates. But as soon as we can get people back and back training, then obviously it's in the interest of the business and the long-term interest of the business to carry on. So as soon as we know, we will be notifying everybody accordingly.
I've got one from Hussam at MTL. Hussam says the most affected groups are the elderly and people with medical conditions. Could we not keep those people on furlough and bring everyone else back to work?
Again, I think in all the requests we've had from all sides, I think we've tried to be as fair and reasonable and as accommodating as we possibly can. We've all got relatives who are elderly, we've all got issues personally as well, and we all take the decisions based on what is a right and fair way. So every decision is taken. There is no blanket decisions, there's no blanket directives. We are taking every individual case, discussing it between us, and then making a decision accordingly and trying to be as fair and as reasonable as we possibly can. But yes, we have taken decisions right across all sites to hopefully make the most fair and right decision that we can. Yeah.
I've got one from Anonymous at Laser. I think this is someone that must be shielding. For those that are currently at home shielding, once they do return to work, what extra precautions do they have to take?
Well, if they're shielding, they'll have their own individual reasons for shielding, I guess. So we'll need to discuss with them if they need anything over and above the extra measures that we've put in place with the social distancing, the extra sanitising, the spreading out of shifts and spreading out of office space and patterns, etc. But if there's any specific requests that employee has, they should be contacting the line manager or you or both direct as soon as possible, putting forward their individual cases and asking for any specific requirements that they may need. We can then discuss it as a management team and try and help wherever possible we can.
I've got an anonymous one from someone at Machining Division in Blackburn. With this virus being with us for some time, possibly until even 2022, what changes are you looking at implementing on a long-term scale, such as essential training, first aid, recruitment, shift patterns, visitors on site?
Good question. We've been dealing mainly with the here and now every day, because obviously it's been very reactionary. So as government legislation and directives have changed every day, we have moved a little bit from the emergency position to the getting back to work position and trying to pre-plan things. As you said, we don't know how long this is going to go on for, so we don't know what provisions we'll need to put in place forever. Social distancing might be part of our social life and work life forevermore. We just don't know. In terms of training people on first aid is a good point. We will need to have a more understanding going forward and what we're left with after this pandemic has ceased. But yeah, we will continue to have the management meetings. Every Friday morning, we're having a countrywide management meeting. All the general managers and all the heads of departments are in a online meeting that lasts for at least 2 hours. We're very candid, very upfront with each other about what everybody's wanting to do, and any specific requirements we'll discuss. We're also discussing best practices for each division. So where somebody's introducing something that we and the directors think is very relevant to the rest of the sites, we're encouraging the general managers to adopt them as well. So going forward, our lives are going to change, our working lives are going to change. We don't know all the answers yet. We're only weeks into this. And as we move forward, obviously we'll implement any changes that are necessary and we feel are to the benefit of staff and to the business.
Yeah. I've got one from John at Machining. John would like to know if WEC are receiving the money yet from the government to cover the job retention scheme. And John's also put every credit to WEC for helping with this pandemic, making ventilators and so on. If it saves just one person's life, it's all well worth it. So thanks for that, John. But he wants to know whether we've started receiving any money.
When the first scheme was announced, we was all a bit cautious because obviously governments announce things and then change their mind. We have got an exceptionally high wage bill, as you can imagine, for all the sites, for almost 1,000 people. That is a big payroll to cover. So we had to take a leap of faith, and the directors decided, you know, to carry on and go with the scheme, even though it was very sketchy details at that time. We still have a number of staff that are paid weekly. So we continued, obviously, covering the wage, the weekly wage bill, and we covered the end of March salaries and the end of April salaries and some in between on various sites. And we took a leaf for faith the government would cover that, which they have done. So as the date opened, I think it was the 20th of April, our finance team worked hard to get the claims into the system, which they did. And the government promised to have that money within 6 days, working days, and we have received that. So the company has started receiving the income from that after we've had to pay it out, of course. But that's been the benefit of the business being strong and healthy financially. We haven't had to seek any borrowings for that, which means that there's no extra finance costs or strain on repaying that back afterwards, which is again another advantage of working for a strong group like WEC. Thank you for his comments about the NHS. I have two sisters who work frontline, so I appreciate how important it is that we've been able to be part of that cause. And we feel proud the way that we reacted very quickly to get some absolutely much needed parts. Even as I said earlier, to the point where our machining division have currently ongoing making machine parts for ventilators as we speak. So yes, it's been welcome. To give everybody a flavour, we think we'll be claiming something in the region of about £1 million a month to help with the wage bill, which is a huge amount of money, as you can imagine, that helps us continue. But in terms of some industries, there's only a slight scratch when you look at the airline industries, etc., what they will be claiming. But yes, it's been welcome and it helps us deal with the here and now and gives us some time to be able to get through these severe issues that we've got.
Got another question from Anonymous. For those that have been or become furloughed, and quite a lot of people have asked me this as well, so for those who have been or become furloughed, what is your stance on furloughed employees taking up work outside of the company? So they've said not for a competitor, but such as a delivery driver, for pharmacies or volunteering to help the community.
I think we've been very open and transparent from the beginning of that. The employee does need to seek permission from the line manager. And as long as the employee is not going working in our industry or for a direct competitor, and is available for an immediate return to work if necessary, we have no, obviously, issues with somebody taking either paid employment or voluntary employment. Yeah, I think we've been open and transparent about that from the beginning. I'm not sure I've had that many requests direct to me. I'm not sure how many you've had, Gemma, but I thought it was quite a low number, really. But
only a low number, yeah. A question from Machining. if one division of the group gets an influx of work before the others, is it likely that staff from the other divisions might be redeployed to other parts of the group?
Good question, good point. That hasn't happened as yet. We've had spikes in orders, as we've said, for NHS over the past couple of weeks, and we've been able to cover that with the staff within the division itself. Hopefully we bounce back quickly from this, and if we suddenly have an influx of one department that is busy and needs more staff, then it makes absolute sense to use the staff from another division who has been furloughed. So that would be our first point of call, for obvious reasons. It helps the company and it helps the staff. So the answer is a straightforward yes, of course.
Yeah. I've just had a text message through from Adam at Engineering. So Adam says, does the company have a plan for when the furlough runs out at the end of June? Will they be looking at redundancies for those who are currently furloughed, given that we are 50% down on turnover?
The government scheme lasts to the end of June, as he just said and indicated. We're 2 months away. We don't know what the bounce is going to be from our customers. We have a very strong order book. We have some blue chip, really strong, good customer base. I won't sit on here and pretend that there's not going to be any casualties from this. We're protecting everybody as we speak at the moment, and the plan is to keep our workforce. We have put a hell of a lot of money into training and education of staff, and the last thing we want to do is to let people go. So it is not on the current agenda. We are focusing as much as possible to win as much work as possible, get our current customers back trading, and win work that will come available from other customers where some of our competitors may not survive this period, and we need to be ready and willing to take that order book on. So our whole focus is trying to protect everybody as we can.
I think quite a lot of people have probably questioned why WEC's not done maybe a 2-week shutdown or a 3-week shutdown and taken the opportunity to do that. Tessa from Finance has said, how long will it be before the company has to close, or can it continue with the business that it has until the end of lockdown?
Certainly not protecting me with any of these questions, Gemma. How long can the business survive? The business is surviving because of the furlough scheme. You know, quite clearly the government's proposal put that in has been to save jobs, and that is clearly working. It's helping not only us but the economy throughout the UK in getting through this period. We can't predict what happens with customer orders. We need to remain strong, we need to remain vigilant, and we need to be ready at a moment's notice. Should a customer come back to work tomorrow and want parts delivery next week, we need to be ready. So we need to be able to call on our staff, any furloughed staff, immediately to return. Sorry, can you just repeat the first part of that question?
Yeah, Tessa's question, how long will it be before the company has to close, or can it continue with the business that it has until the end of lockdown?
One of the part of the question was whether we considered a shutdown period. If we had have shut down at various sites, you can imagine we won't be supplying parts to the NHS today. So it's vital that we remain open to keep the industry going, because manufacturing has not closed. Yeah. So we've had to adapt and work around what our customers want and what ongoing new customers. We've received quite a few new customers throughout this who were desperate for our help, and we've been able to help. As we're at the mercy, we're a subcontractor. So in general, we don't make many products apart from our CCTV division. You know, the vast majority we are subcontractors to major OEMs or other customers, whether second or third tier supplier. So we're at the mercy of customers' order book. We want them to bounce back quickly so we can bounce back, and we have to make decisions accordingly. So if that means continuing for furloughing more staff because we just don't have the order book, then we literally have no choice. We're working hard to try and win every order that we possibly can.
Just had another message through from someone that works on the lasers at HTA. I think we've kind of touched on this. If after lockdown is lifted and the government pay scheme no longer applies, if WEC and all the companies within doesn't recover and still doesn't make enough money to sustain the workforce, will we be likely to lose our jobs?
Again, I can be as honest as I can, and the honest answer to that is we are in a strong financial position as a group. We have got strong ownership who will look to underpin the business, but we've got to make it work. It's up to the directors, the senior staff, our sales guys, our production guys to make us successful and make us strong. And like any company in history, you know, we've got to remain strong, we've got to remain profitable, but we will do everything we can to help underpin that. We'll cut costs where we can and we'll invest where we can. And we as a company have been renowned of growth year on year on year. Our target for this year was over £100 million as a group of companies that we proposed to the owners back in February. And we genuinely believe we would hit that, obviously unknown of the pandemic that was about to strike. So we continue to focus on being strong. We continue to focus all our efforts in winning as much work as we possibly can.
I've got one from another anonymous from machining. Would it be possible to revisit and do this again in 3 months' time as things are changing and new situations may present itself? They've said, I do believe this is an extremely good idea, and I would very much like to see it again.
If we can, we're going to try and get some feedback after the event, because obviously this is the first time we've done this. Even 10 minutes before we went live, we were still having technical difficulties. So if it's worked, if people feel it's been informative and it's been worthwhile, we won't wait 3 months to do another one. We'll do it as soon as we feel that there's enough information to give back out to people that makes it relevant. So we're happy to put all the time and trouble necessary to pull it together. And like I said, if it's been informative, yeah, we'll do it as and when necessary.
Yeah, got a couple of more live questions that are coming in. Someone that wants to remain anonymous over in Leeds has said, has anyone in the WEC group tested positive for coronavirus?
I was hoping not to answer this question because, touch wood, as of yet, I don't know anybody within the whole of WEC group employees who has actually been in hospital and tested positive. So it's not something we talk about any morning or any major meeting. But as far as I'm concerned, thank God, and for the grace of God, so far I've not been made aware that we have anybody across the country. So let's hope that remains forever.
Someone from Darwin has said, do you know what our competitors are doing? Are they still open?
Well, part of my job as commercial director is to keep a close eye on all our competitors. So we do that using intelligence and using social media. And so far, I've not seen of any of our competitors who have closed. A lot of furloughed staff and a lot are on skeleton staff. And using business intelligence, we know that the whole industry is struggling. You know, for what this has been absolutely unprecedented for me, but laser engineering in the last 15 years, I've never known us be switching machines off. And we have been switching machines off recently, which is evident to the sales stats have been presented. So we're feeling it hard, but all our competitors must be feeling it as well.
Yeah. Someone asks, what sectors would you be looking to move into if the industries that we supply to at the minute slow down?
There isn't really a sector we don't supply. If you think of all the sectors right across the group that we do, you know, there's a long, long list from yellow goods to white goods and everything in between. You know, so anything that we can supply, we are currently supplying, whether it's defence, whether it's aerospace, whether it's oil and gas, whether it's nuclear, whether it's retail. We are very much in them sectors anyway. Obviously, coming out of this, there'll be some growth industries that we'll keep an eye on, and where necessary, we'll have specific and dedicated sales teams to actively look at them areas and see what are potential and viable for us. And if so, we will very quickly look at getting into them. And if there's any investments needed in terms of machinery or training, etc., we'd look to impose that straight away. So
I'm just getting quite conscious about the time now, Wayne. I don't know whether you want to answer a couple more questions or whether you want to.
Well, I've got a bit of a roundup. It'll only take a couple of minutes. So if you want to if there's any one or two last ones you want to ask.
Yeah, people are concerned over their absence. Obviously, we've got trigger points in place for absences and things. So we've had quite a few people saying if they're off due to coronavirus or they've got to isolate, will that go against them in terms of their absence triggers?
You can answer that one. You're HR.
I would say not with a pandemic. I think that's unfair to use it as one of the absence trigger points. Obviously, the government's advice is to self-isolate, so we'd be wrong to use that as part of the absence trigger. Quite a few questions around health and safety and how we're going to kind of contain it when people are back at work. So someone's asked in terms of hay fever and other allergies, is there anything that we're kind of thinking about or putting into place with people that might be sneezing and things and passing germs on when they return to work?
Not sure I understand the question directly, but obviously in terms of COVID, we're putting in the social distancing and the cleansing processes. But obviously if somebody's got other symptoms for other ailments, which people will have, you know, we would hope that people act and behave accordingly. So if they have hay fever, obviously they've got to make sure they're taking the right medicine and medication and make sure they're keeping the distance from people accordingly.
Yeah. Someone from Up at Machining's asked, if those that have been furloughed get to the end of their allowed furlough period, I don't quite understand that bit, is it likely that they may be switched with another member of staff?
Well, there is no maximum furlough period. There's a minimum of 3 weeks, but there's no maximum. The only maximum date is the end of June currently, and I will stress currently, because that may change. Obviously, the government initially brought the scheme into end at the end of May and then extended it quite quickly after. They may extend that again, who knows? So there is no maximum furlough apart from that date when obviously the business is expected to resume it. Do you want me to round up now?
Yeah, I think there's quite a lot that I can kind of cover off and questions that have been duplicated. So I think I can respond to them separately. Yeah.
I think I'm right in saying that you plan to do a Q&A consolidation of all the questions, put it into writing and then distribute that accordingly over the next few days. So any questions that have been missed, you'll be able to ask me direct and I'll be able to answer them as part of the Q&A session.
Okay.
So hopefully today has been worthwhile. It's been difficult technically getting it all put together in a short period. I'm sure there's improvements we can make. I'm sure there's ideas that we can put into place for a next one if we think it's viable and it's been worthwhile. So we'll get the feedback from that and then we'll make some decisions. I'm happy to do it again. I'm sure Gemma's happy to do it again too. I think we've covered most of the things that are possible to cover. If something changes in terms of legislation or law quite dramatically, we would look to inform you immediately. And if it meant doing something like this makes a lot of sense, then obviously we'll do that as well. But I will reiterate, we are all fortunate as employees of WEC to work for a very strong and stable company. So we have a good platform, a starting platform to start from when something like this happens. We are a financially stable business with some excellent facilities, brilliant people, and some brilliant kit and capabilities. So we are in a very, very strong position as we start coming out of this, which puts us, I think, on par at least, but probably better than most of our competition. The directors and senior management will continue to review every day changes in legislation, changes in customer order book, and changes in the current environment or directives, and we'll make sure that we pass that back to the senior managers and back through the regular updates that Gemma has been sending out via email and text messaging and any other platforms that we've got. I'd like to finish on one positive, and that's one of our divisions in Darwin has been told at 2 o'clock this afternoon that they've won a major contract. We've been negotiating that over the last couple of months. It's a very, very prominent blue chip company. I'm not allowed to say who it is because we're under NDA, but that then brings work for the division. We've been touting this for the last couple of months, and we've just been told this afternoon that we've won it. If we'd have been closed, who knows, that may have gone elsewhere. So that's a minimum of a £2 million a year account of a 5-year period minimum. So that in itself is at least £10 million worth of business to come into the factory. So that's a positive to finish on. I'd like to thank everybody anybody who's given up the time to tune in and attend this. I hope it's been informative. I hope it's been technically worked. I don't know until afterwards because I don't get any feedback. I can only see Gemma, that's it. So thank you to everybody. Stay safe and have a good weekend. Thank you.